When I talk, they listen. This is what they've been missing. This podcast is what they've been missing. When I talk, they listen. This is what they've been missing. This podcast is what they've been missing. When I talk, they listen. This is what they've been missing. This podcast, this is what they've been missing. When I talk, they listen. This is what they've been missing. This podcast is what they've been missing. Word. Welcome to Marc My Words Podcast, where our guests agree to talk. I agree to listen. You agree to eavesdrop. Our guest today is an African-American politician and lawyer who served as the 69th mayor of Rochester, New York from 2014 until resignation in 2021. She was previously the president of Rochester City Council. She was the first woman to serve as mayor in Rochester, New York. It is with great honor that I sit amongst Miss Lovely Warren.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for being
Truly
here.
appreciate it.
You're welcome. Well, let's just get into it. I want to sit and converse with you in a manner that none of us have ever seen before. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to start with getting to know you, knowing you from a more personal realm. Mm-hmm. A lot of us get to see you in the political or the news media realm. Although we'll get to that part, I just want to start off by take us from like your childhood, where you were born and raised, what type of neighborhood you come from, and things of that sort.
So I was born and raised in the city of Rochester on the west side. I lived in the 19th ward with my mom and dad for many years, but my grandparents owned and lived on Jefferson Avenue, my maternal grandparents, and we spent a lot of time there. We would, my cousins and I would go to my grandmother's house in the morning. She would cook us breakfast, walk us to school. We attended number 4 school at the time. Mm-hmm. And so we spent a lot of time on Jefferson Avenue on the west side of the city. And I attended, public school in the beginning, and I went to Catholic school for a number of years. And then I graduated from Wilson Magnet High School in 1995. And then went on to college and to law school. So Rochester is my home that I truly, truly loved and appreciated all the lessons that I learned here.
Okay. Jefferson Avenue, mm-hmm. From my research and my knowing, is considered to me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, somewhat of like an urban, impoverished type neighborhood. Was it back then, at that time?
So, it had its challenges. And, my grandfather was the watermelon man. People knew him as the watermelon man, right? So he would bring watermelon from down south, King Street, and he would sell it. And so that was our first job. Everybody, and he was also a landlord. And so we would either be fixing up houses and going in and painting, or we would be on the porch selling watermelons along with my grandmother. Entrepreneurial spirit is what they had. And so although Jefferson Avenue had challenges, I think that even to this day, it has resilience. It's the one place where you have more Black-owned businesses than anywhere else. Unfortunately, it has changed over the years. Used to have a number of, Taylor's, store was right across the street from my grandparents. Down from there, you had the Kitchen and Mason's and all the other restaurants that we would go to. J&E Grocery and Freddy's, and all those things were a part of my childhood, things that we remember. And, Pie Lady and all of that was so very, very important to growing up. So it was family. And even though it might have been a challenged neighborhood, we never felt like we were poor.
That's good to hear. You never felt like you were poor in what is deemed as an impoverished neighborhood.
Yeah.
That's great. And you would say that because of the entrepreneurial spirit.
Yes, and the love, right? Okay. So we all walked to school. Okay. And we walked home from school. Everybody knew Mrs. McCleary, mm-hmm. and everyone knew who she was and my grandfather was, and the Taylors that lived around the corner. It was a family. And I think that is part of the challenges that our children face today, because it doesn't necessarily always feel like a village where you know the people that live around the corner from you, or even your next door neighbor.
Wow. So coming from elementary school, which is for school, is a shout out to like the Mr. for school people. Were you familiar with Mr. Perkins and those kind of arts programs?
Yes.
R.I.P. to Mr. Perkins.
Yes, rest in peace. Mr. Perkins and the Black Seeds.
Right.
And I mean, I look at the people that he invested so much time in the Black Seeds, and those, young people that grew up today are just resilient, and he really instilled something into people at an early age at number 4 school with the Black Seeds, understanding not only where you came from, but that you have a purpose in life and that you can do and accomplish and achieve whatever it is that you want to achieve. And until he retired, that was what his goal was, to pour into young people. Now, I personally never had him as a teacher, but he was in our school. And so we always knew who he was, and the respect was there. And he was a 3rd grade teacher. I attended Catholic school in the 3rd grade. So I left in the 2nd grade. And so that's the reason why I didn't have them. But for all the people that I know that were a part of the Black Seeds, that's one of the things that I missed out on growing up.
Very beneficial. I've heard that as well. So, what made you or your parents switch you from the public school, for school, to Catholic school?
So, I think that it was a number of different things at the time. We had, was leaving, we lived in the 19th ward. So, my dad wanted us to go to school over there around the corner from us. And a lot of at that point in time, Catholic school was the premier school for young Black kids. And there were scholarships and other things that would allow us to attend. Now, for me, my dad was an engineer at Xerox. My mom worked at Kodak for a number of years. And so we lived what we would call the best middle class life for a period of time until things changed. And so they wanted to give us the best education that we could possibly have, and felt like a Catholic school would provide that to us.
All right. So coming from Catholic school is now the segue into high school. Did you go to, what was your middle school did you attend?
I went to Catholic school all the way basically up. I went back to for school for 4th grade. And, it was a little transition there because we moved to California for maybe 4 months. So my mom packed us all up, and my sister and we moved all the way across the country, drove, and then it didn't work out so well. So she brought us back home. And we stayed with my grandmother for a little while until we went back to our house in the 19th ward. And so after that, I then went to Wilson Magnet High School. So I was at Our Lady of Good Counsel first, and then Our Lady of Good Counsel closed. So I went to Holy Family, and then graduated from Holy Family in the 8th grade, and then went to Wilson. Okay.
So you grew up in a 2-parent home?
Yes. Yes. So I grew up in a 2-family home. For the most part, growing up for me, it was great. We rode bikes, we played outside. We had our extended family with our cousins, our aunts, our uncles, our grandparents, and people came to visit. My mom and dad, my father's from Trinidad, so we used to have, they used to have fish fries on Friday night, and friends come over and, play music and have, little get-togethers. And so everything was really, really great for me in my younger years. It changed when I was about 13, when I learned at that point in time that things that, with my parents was not what I thought it was.
And how did you take to that learning that things weren't what you thought it was? And
it was tough, right? So here you are thinking that things were perfect, right? And then my mom, I have to give a testament to her. because she really wanted me to believe that things were okay. And while her world was falling apart, looking back, I see that now, but I didn't at the time. You know, how I found out that my father was using drugs was a cousin of mine. We were walking home from school because I had seen my uncle, my mom's brother, paying my school tuition. And we were walking home, and I said, you know, Uncle Nate was at school today, and he didn't have any kids that went to school there. His children went to a different school. I was like, I wonder why he was there. He was like, oh, you don't know? Your dad's on drugs. And I'm like, what?
It just came right out and told you like that.
Just that easy.
Right.
And from then on, you know, now you start to pay attention to things, right? And I went home and I asked my dad, and you know, I said, well, are you on drugs? And thank God he's been clean now for, I believe, almost 15,
Excellent.
16 years. And
Great.
so I'm thankful that he was able to come out of that and come into recovery, because it was very, very tough from that day on. So you're talking about sometimes coming home and, you know, he gave the car to one of his, you know, dealers for the weekend, you know, or sold, you know, the furniture, or, you know, the money was gone. So it was very, very tough. But, and, you know, I just remember one time, and this was the thing that changed my life forever. At that point in time was after coming home. You know, he had been in, I don't know if you have ever been around someone that that was on a binge.
Yes.
And it was bad.
Yes.
It was really bad.
I remember binge days from my loved ones as well.
Yeah, and my mom had actually taken me to get him from a house, and had brought him home. And
wait, your mother took you to a drug house to pull your dad out of it?
Yes.
Why did she take you?
Because I think that she was trying to save him, and my father and I had a special relationship, right? He was always there for me. You know, I was daddy's little girl, and I think that when you're trying to save somebody, you're gonna do everything that you possibly can, not necessarily knowing that the damage that it was doing to me at that point in time, right? So we came home and he was on a binge, and he was just not gonna stay. And I just remember it was raining outside. I had to be maybe 14 years old at that point in time. And he came home, you know, he came inside, he was fussing about coming to get him, and, you know, why this and why that. And he was going back out. And I went running after him, and I said, you know, Dad, are you gonna choose drugs over me? And he left. And I ran back in the house, my mom, and I fell on the floor, and I just cried and cried, and my mom got on the floor with me, and I said, I can't believe he's choosing drugs over me. And that was very tough for a girl that had a great relationship with her father to have experienced, and not understanding just what drugs was doing to him and his life and her and our entire family. It was a tough time.
Sorry to hear that, but glad to see the overcome, hearing that your dad is clean.
Yes.
Seeing the product of what you turned out to be. At that time, at the moment, it probably bothered you, but you definitely superseded that moment. And so I applaud you for that.
Thank you.
So now we go on into high school. You're into Wilson. Now at that time, from my research, Wilson took a lot of credits to graduate. One of the highest credits in the Rochester district, like what, 28 credits at the time? Okay, 28 credits.
Or more.
So you have a little Catholic experience.
Yes.
You have love, entrepreneurship around you. So you have things that can push you to persevere in Wilson Magnet High School. What made you choose Wilson out of all the high schools here in Rochester?
My sister attended Wilson,
Okay.
and so she was a cheerleader, rock star, very smart. She was in Academy of Excellence. My cousins was also there, and it was a good school. And I wanted to be a lawyer, and so I wanted to go to a high school. But high school for years for me, I was really, as the young people say, feeling myself, right? So I started acting out. With all the things that was going on at home, it was a challenge. So although I was good academically, meaning I did my work and was able to still thrive, I was still a very, very angry young lady.
Yeah, because when you said 14, you had to be like ninth grade when your father chose drugs over you.
Yeah.
You had to be like ninth grade at the time. Give us some examples of Lovely Warren acting out.
I was a fighter, right? You couldn't say anything to me. I would fly off at the handle. I was, just really combative. And, people didn't know Lovely. That wasn't my name, right? I had a nickname in high school, and even now, I know people that know me because of the name that they called me, right? And that was just a childhood name that my mom had given me. And so acting out was me just being very, very angry, not knowing how to express myself in a different way. And even though I had great support, right? So my mom's family was very, very supportive to us.
Okay. So beyond that, how was the Wilson High School experience? Is that where you decided? You said you wanted to be a lawyer, and they had martial jurists at the time, which would go to school to be the law. But you went to Wilson. So when did you decide that I want to step into law?
I did that when I was in second grade. Right? I used to always watch Matlock. Murder, She Wrote. It was always the old, law shows, but it really stemmed from my grandfather, who was shot as a security guard while working at Wegmans on West Avenue. He ultimately survived, but I wanted to know what happened to the person that shot him. And so my uncle Reggie at the time was a state trooper, and he he said, well, he'll go to jail and explain to me the process. And I said, okay, I want to be a lawyer. And then my sister would always like, you always watching those law shows? And I'm like, I'm going to be a lawyer. That's what I'm going to do. And so I never gave up on that dream. Despite what was going on, I never gave up on that dream to become an attorney.
All right. So after Wilson, where did we go from there?
I went to Buffalo State for a year, and then I transferred to John Jay College of Criminal Justice in Manhattan. And so I went downstate for another 4 years because I lost credits in college. So by transferring, I had to do an extra year. And then I also did an internship in the New York State Assembly when I was in college, where I was taking 15 credit hours. That was only 12. So I went to John Jay College of Criminal Justice, and then I went to Albany Law School, and where I fulfilled the dream of becoming a lawyer.
All right. So how many times did it take Lovely Warren to pass the bar? One
time.
That's magnificent. Do you know, every time I meet a lawyer, the first thing I say is, how many times did it take you to pass the bar? And it's not often one.
One time.
Because that's like one of the hardest tests, isn't it?
Yes, in New York State, it is a very, very challenging test. I just, thank God for his many blessings, and, that I was able to do it on one try.
So you've always had intellect. That's what I'm hearing. Even going from Ford School to Catholic School to Wilson, intellect has always been like a middle part of your heart. It seems like you are very brilliant.
Well, thank you. Yes, I think that it was just instilled in us. So I'm named after my Aunt Lovely.
Okay.
So she was the first in our family and my mom's family to go on to college. And so after that, it was like, everybody, like, this is what you're going to do. Either you're going to get into a career or you're going to college, but doing nothing is not an option. And so that was, and then my father, as I said, is from Trinidad, and in the Caribbean, education is, something that they instill in all of their children. and want them to go on and to be the best that they could possibly be. So even though my dad had his challenges, his whole thing was get an education. And no matter what, even when in his worst days, it was don't follow in my footsteps. I want you to get an education.
Right. Now, with your being named after your aunt Lovely, the name Lovely. Tell me how did that? How did life go with that name? I know people many times probably say, "Is that your real name?" Is that
all the time, even to this day? Is that your real name? It was challenging, but growing up, I never went by that name.
Right.
I went by a nickname. Okay. So growing up, I didn't go by that name. And so it wasn't until I got to college that I really used Lovely as my name, and came to embrace it and love it and thank my aunt for naming me after her. Because she came to the hospital, they didn't know what to name me. Like everybody's like, "Oh, your parents must have loved you."
Yeah.
And they had no idea what to name me. Wow. And she said, no. She was in the hospital at the time, and she said, "Name her after me. Name her Lovely Ann Warren." And it's funny.
Whole name?
Yeah, name her Lovely Ann Warren. And that was what my name was. And well, it is. And my initials is Law.
Wow. You know what I'm just getting at? Wow, so it was destined.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we passed to the lawyer. What got you into politics? When did you shift or transition mentally to say, okay, I want to get into politics?
So public service, as I like to call it, I was after an internship with Assemblyman David Gant. And so for many people that don't know, Assemblyman David Gant was the first African-American elected to state office here in Rochester. Actually sued the state to create the district because he felt that people, especially Black people and people of color, needed representation from this particular area. And if you know the state of New York, a lot of the Black representatives came from either New York City or downstate. We had Arthur Eve from Buffalo, but then, he was here in Rochester, and they, of course, fought a good fight on behalf of us. And, I definitely appreciate Arthur Eve because he started the EOP program, which is the Educational Opportunity Program that allowed my aunt to go to school. I also went to school as an EOP student. He also started a number of different programs from the state legislature that allowed young Black aspiring people to, make a better life for themselves and their families. Great.
So going now into what's the difference? I heard you say public service versus politics. Why do you differentiate the two?
Because I think that people have a negative connotation for politics, right? It's like you're playing a game, you politic it with me.
Right.
But when you're a public servant, you try your best to keep the views of the public in your front mind. The seat doesn't, Assemblyman Gant used to always say, the seat don't belong to me, the seat belongs to the public. Because you're elected to serve. You're elected to carry forth what you believe is what they want and what's best for your constituents. Sometimes you do a great job, and sometimes you have some challenges. Sometimes it works out, and sometimes it doesn't. But you always try to do your best to serve the public. And to me, that's what public service is all about.
Right. So it sounds like the late, great Assemblyman David Gant is what drove you to want to become a public servant.
Yes. I never in a million years imagined that I would be mayor. Being an intern in his office changed my outlook on law. I always thought that I would be in the courtroom,
defense attorney or
a prosecutor. I thought I would be a prosecutor for a number of years, and defense. I just wanted to be in the courtroom.
Okay.
And actually, it was a school counselor at John Jay that encouraged me to go to Albany and do an internship. And so I would tell any child or any person that's in college right now to make sure that they explore the possibilities of doing an internship or a fellowship, something. And that's why it was important to me when I was mayor to open the doors to collegiate students to come into City Hall to learn and get their footing, because it helps you understand what it is that you truly want to do, right?
Right.
So I always thought that I would be in a courtroom at that point in time. But, I was led on a different path because I was exposed to something different, a different side of the law where you could actually write laws and actually implement them. And the people that's in the courtroom are actually doing and implementing in practice the laws that you actually write and put on the books.
Sounds great. Now, fast forwarding to when you actually started to get the numbers and signatures and things like that. Take us to the day that you decided I'm going to run. What made you choose the mayor to?
So I wasn't mayor first, right? So I had ran for city council. I was in Assemblyman David Gant's office for about 4 or 5 years prior to. So I did an internship in 1999. And then Wade Norwood, who was another prodigy of Assemblyman David Gant's, decided that he was going to run for mayor. And when he decided to run for mayor, a seat opened on city council. And so I decided to run for city council at that point in time. I actually lost. I lost by 7 votes. And, I didn't put in the work that I should have at that point in time. And I think that I should have lost at that point in time because I was really green. I was young. I was 25, I believe. And, really thought like, I didn't understand public service at that moment, right? I needed a little bit more time under Assemblyman David Gant to learn and to be at his feet, to really understand what it was to truly serve people in the way that they needed to be served. Wade ended up losing that race as well, and I learned a lot. I would then come back 2 years later. There was a seat that opened up. Ben Douglas was retiring from a Northeast seat and on city council, and the assemblyman came to me and said, I think that you should run. To rewind the time, in 2005 when I ran, my grandmother was alive, and she said, it's not your time. I had just gotten married, and she just was like, it's not your time. When it's your time, you'll know. Well, my grandmother passed that next year in 2006.
Wow.
And so 2007, the seat opened up and the assemblyman came to me and said, I think that you should run. I think that you're ready. And I was like, no, I don't think that I'm ready. He was like, no, I think that you're ready. And I was like, I don't even think I live in that district. And he was like, because it was a district seat, so it wasn't a large seat. In city council, you have 4 district seats. In the Rochester City Council, you have 4 district seats and 5 at-large seats. And so he said, well, let's look. And he goes and he pulls out the map. And when you look at the map, my side of the street that I live on is in the district. My neighbors across the street is not in the district, right? And so he said, your grandmother is telling you that it's time to run. So, and that was amazing. I look at moments like that and just thinking back of all those, because it took us, at the time we looked for, a number of houses before when we were purchasing a house in 2005. So we finally, we had put in a lot of offers. We finally found that house and decided to settle down there. And it was in the district and not even knowing that.
Wow. Purpose. So you started, that's where you got your feet wet into public service on the city council.
Yes.
Then you decided, okay, now I want to go bigger. So did Mr. Gant play a role in that as well?
So, not really. Not when I say not really, because at first he said, he was like, I don't know if I want you to do this now, right? So you're talking about 2007. I was a city council member, Northeast representative. 2010, I was elected by my peers on city council to be president of city council. So youngest president of city council ever. And then you're talking about in 2013 now running for mayor, right? And so his thing was like, I don't know. And I remember running his, well, not running, but being his campaign manager for his election. And he had a tough election, right? There was a lot of things that happened when I decided to run for mayor. Bob Duffy became the lieutenant governor. Yes. And then we had Tom Richards that was the mayor for a period of time. And there were a lot of different moving parts at the moment, right? And I remember they had, we say people had ran against him and was trying to take him out. And I had ran his campaign. And I remember at his victory celebration, I saw those people, and the Spirit whispered in my ear, no matter what, you have to run. And I did. And I went to him and I said, I think I want to run for mayor. And he said, you want to do what? Now? Like, not 4 years from now? Like, are you serious? And I was like, no, I need to run now. I said, our people deserve representation. And I believe that I can give it to them. And he said, well, how much money do you have? None. How many people do you have? None. Well, how do you think you're going to win? I don't know, but I just believe that it's time.
Ambitious.
And he said, okay. He said, go home, talk to your family. And if this is something that they want you to do, I'm going to go with you. So I went home, talked to my family, and talked to my granddad, who was alive at the time. And I remember him going to the Bible, Joshua 1:9, be strong and courageous. Do not fear, because the Lord thy God is with you wherever you go. And he was an elder in the church, and that's what I stood on.
You stood on it, like they say today, standing on business.
Yeah.
Here at Marc My Words, we like to take a moment to mention. In Moments to Mention, we discuss a business or services that's offered in your community so that we bring awareness to just that. Today, Marc My Words would like a moment to mention Northern Nola. Northern Nola is the home of authentic New Orleans cuisine and American-inspired dishes, serving all of your catering needs. If you can create it, they can cater it. Northern Nola also does pop-ups at Women of Colors of New York, located at 539 South Avenue, Rochester, New York, on Saturdays from 12 noon to 5 p.m. Visit their website to book your catering event, to view Saturday's menu, and to get all their updates. Also, you can follow them on all social media platforms, well, at least IG and Facebook, at Northern Nola. Thank you, Northern Nola, for your support in this moment to mention. So you got your numbers up, your signatures, and what was the moment that you feel that people took you serious, not only just as a woman, but as a Black woman? Because as you said, even Mr. Gann was like, you're not ready now. So imagine what other people were saying that wasn't of your culture or of your creed or whatnot. So when do you feel that people started to take you serious as, oh, she's serious? Do you think it was the signatures or?
No, it was after the primary.
Okay.
I believe that people took me serious prior to, in that I was out knocking on doors, and we had a lot of people that was energized, that was out knocking on doors, that was talking to people, registering people to vote. We had people come here from Syracuse, from Buffalo. Before that election, meaning the day before, a poll came out and said that I was down by 32 points. So people thought like, oh, she's definitely going to lose this. She's going to get swamped. And, I came back and I won by 16%. So overcoming a 32% deficit the day before to now winning 16 percentage points, it was like, oh my gosh, like this is unreal, right? But I believe that the people wanted change. They wanted something different. They wanted more investment in their community. And I wanted to bring that to them.
As you did.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that now, you're now a mayor.
Mm-hmm.
And how did it feel to you that day, that very day that you broke history?
Yes.
What was that feeling?
It was amazing. And it was more amazing on a day that I, won, because it was like for, of course, the Assemblyman David Gant, one of his, kids, he was always about reaching back and helping those that come behind him, right? And so, I wasn't the only one. There were many that came through under him.
Mm-hmm.
So it was that. And then we had my grandfather, who, mother passed away when he was 3. My father was an undocumented immigrant. So here you have this kid that never should have made it, right? To now become mayor of the 3rd largest city in the state of New York.
Great. How did you approach the challenges faced by the city, and what strategies did you employ to foster change?
So I always looked at it as, don't give me 99 reasons why we can't do something. Mm-hmm. Find the one way you can. Mm-hmm. And that was important to me. I felt like our community had, was always told, you need to wait. You got to wait till you have this. You got to wait till you do this. And I didn't feel like I felt like we could do both. We could invest in neighborhoods and invest in downtown. Figure out how to get the resources. In my first year, I traveled a lot to Washington, D.C. to let people know that we're still here. We're still Rochester. We're still the land of Kodak, Xerox, and Bosch. We still have businesses here. I wanted people to know that we were back and we were coming back. And we started to get resources, started to get recognized nationally again. And that was very, very important to me. And so given the challenges that we had, being not only having, impoverished parts of our city where you could live in Rochester all your life and never see poverty, I didn't want people to feel like they didn't exist. I wanted everybody to know that I see you, and I'm going to do my best to fight for you. Right.
So your first term, 4 years, would you say that was like kind of smooth sailing?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
The first year, because I think people were upset. Mm-hmm. The powers that be were very, very upset. Like, oh no, like, we're never, I don't care what she does, right? We're just going to get through these 4 years and, and never accepted me being the mayor, right? Despite the successes, despite the fact that we were making investments in neighborhoods and still doing things in downtown and trying to doing job creation and other things like that, our city, to reflect the people that it served, right? When I ran for my second term, it was a challenge, right? They put up 2 different people against me, former police chief and a local reporter that was popular. And they thought that they were going to beat me then, but I won.
You did. And bringing me into the next question here for that second term, policing and community relations have been important topics during your time as mayor. How did you address issues related to police reform and community trust?
Policing in an urban environment is always a challenge, right? And so what was important to me was to make sure that the police department started to reflect, you talking about, years of just police officers not necessarily looking like the people that they're serving, right? And so you wanted to do recruitment. And so I wanted to make sure that we diversified the ranks, not just the police officers that was coming in, but the sergeants, the lieutenants, the captains, and the police chief. So that was very important. Having a relationship and building that service, that thought of, okay, we're in this together. We need a community that has police officers, right? We know that with the challenges that we were facing and still face to this day, but we have to find a way to treat people with respect as well, right?
Yes.
And so our police department I wanted to demand that particular part of it as well. And so we did that, but we had our challenges. We had situations where, people acted not in the bounds of what I felt was the law. And, when they didn't, I wanted, and we did hold them accountable.
Okay.
And, sometimes, that didn't go over well with a number of people because here you are, we're putting on the uniform every day, going out there in a dangerous situation, and you're fighting for a community that doesn't respect us.
Right. And this is a great segue into police challenges as we speak. So when you hear the name, and God bless his soul, Daniel Prude, what do you think of?
I think of a man in that lost his life senselessly on our streets. I'm saddened by the way that he came to our community and lost his life. And I'm sorry that we didn't do a better job taking care of him the way that we should have. Coming from the background that I have, you have someone that's in crisis, you want to support them as best as you could. And I don't believe that we did that here. I felt that what happened to Daniel Prude was tragic, and I am very, very sorry for his family's loss.
Yes. And when you say we, who consists of we?
The people that was there to take care of him, from the police department to the paramedics to the city, right?
Mm-hmm.
Although at the time, I'm in my bed sleeping,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know anything about this, right? I didn't see the video, and we talk about this, till the cows come home, right? Until August, and this happened in February, I believe. That's a long time.
For you not to have seen the video.
For me not to have seen the video,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a long time for his family not to have heard
Right.
from the city about what happened to him, about his tragic death, all of that. That situation and him losing his life, for me, I feel that we should have done a better job of helping him.
And I love the way that you're making yourself inclusive when you say we.
Mm-hmm.
With that said, unfortunately, sometimes the chatter is more like, do you ever feel like people were trying to make you like top blame of that situation and that played into your candidacy of the next term?
I felt like it was orchestrated chaos, right? Because it really wasn't about Daniel Prude or his family. In the end, you realize that it really wasn't about them. It was about other folks and what they wanted. This man lost his life and was alone at the time, crying out for help. That needed to be dealt with, and systematic changes happened because of it, right? So when you think about the crisis intervention team that we implemented, you think about the fact that we change things on how we do policing in the community nowadays, and how we respond to people that are in a crisis like that, a mental health crisis, or suffering. But should that have happened? Should he had had to die in order for us to do that?
Right.
And so at the time, you're doing the best that you can with the knowledge and the information that you have. And I felt like I did not have all the information to make the best decisions at the time. And if I did, I would have done things completely differently. But I wasn't afforded that opportunity. And because of that, you have what happened. But I understand people's upset. that where people were upset. I understand their pain. I understand their frustration. Most of all, I understand their anger, right? When I had before Daniel Prude, there was another gentleman, there was Christopher Pate.
Mm-hmm.
And although he didn't die, he suffered a terrible act, at the hands of an officer that, for me, we held accountable. I would have did the same thing here. But it just didn't happen that way.
Because of what I'm hearing is basically because of that gap from February to August, from you not knowing what you should have known would have been able to.
So let me just be clear on knowing, right?
Okay.
So what do you know? When did you know it?
Yes.
Everybody goes through that, right?
Right.
How things are explained to you or told to you. What I understood is something completely different. I always thought that, there was a man that had a drug overdose and was taken to the hospital. The corporation counsel came down and said, listen, have you seen this video? And I'm like, no. Watching the video just infuriated me.
Mm.
That's when I realized what had happened
Mm-hmm.
and how tragic it was and how this man had died in our city.
Okay. And that infuriation caused a reaction.
Yeah, it caused a series of chain of events that, to this day, will forever change our city.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think that we'll all be changed because of it.
Again, I love the way you keep saying we, because I need the people to know that you hear and take accountability where it should be taken.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as if you're trying to seemingly duck or hide or anything. You're just going off of what was told to you.
Well, yes, we will always go back in,
Right.
And I think that when I say we, everybody that was around at that point in time that was a part of this, right, and their understanding and what and connecting and trying to connect the dots, right, it just missed the mark for everybody, right? It just missed the mark, and I think that everybody wishes that they could go back and maybe I should have said it differently. Maybe and some people feel like they might have done all that they could do at that moment in time. I, for me, don't feel like I did a great job leading the city at that point in time. We were going through so much. COVID had just hit. Yeah. We're focusing on other things. So it was so much that was happening, and it's not to provide excuses, but it is to say that I definitely understand people's anger and how they feel and how they felt, and I'm sorry that I did not do my due diligence and look at the video earlier than that. Not that I had a reason to, you know what I mean? I didn't at that point in time have a reason to, in my mind. And that's it.
Right. Have you ever spoken to anyone or anyone in the Prude family directly or personally?
I reached out, but I can understand the sentiments. I actually saw Mr. Prude's brother probably about a year ago when I was walking to court one day, and he said, "Oh, I've been looking for you," and I said, "My number hasn't changed. I'm here," right? But when you want to have a discussion like that, there's nothing that I could say to bring his brother back, right?
Right.
Sorry is never going to be enough for anybody, and it's not enough for me. I just wish that we would have dealt with the situation differently.
Okay. So if you can say they're watching now, which I'm pretty sure they are, if you can just look into your camera there, what would you say to them?
I would say, I'm sorry that you lost your loved one the way that you did. And I wish that I could have been a better support to you during your time of grief.
Respect. As we speak on your challenges, because we already spoke of all your good deeds, I just want to read you this headline from New York Times, and you tell me what you feel when you hear this headline. Lovely Warren, troubled Rochester Mayor to resign in plea deal. Ms. Warren will leave office early as part of a plea deal on campaign finance violations. The deal also resolves gun charges against her. Mm-hmm. So if we're speaking on the campaign violations, I think it's, again, I feel like, again, when certain media get a hold of things, they remix things to what you want to believe. So if you're speaking to us, when they say campaign finance violations, what were they trying to depict?
Yeah, that was a very difficult time. And, that I'm going to separate the two because they're two separate issues.
Okay.
The campaign finance issue is very complicated. I had two people that were volunteers, and they made a mistake. Ultimately, my name is at the top, and I'm held responsible for their mistakes. But I want to make it clear that it was never about missing money. Okay. Every dollar was accounted for. Everything was reported. They thought at the time that they were doing things right. And we had advice from, someone that we believed to be an attorney at that time, and, made some decisions that ultimately caused us a lot of heartache and a lot of grief. In the end, when it came down to taking, not going to bat, not going to trial and all that, what happened with my daughter's father and my ex-husband. And that played a lot into why my attorneys and everyone, and also myself, felt that I needed to get this over with. My daughter, who at the time was was 10, getting ready to be 11, was at the center of all of this. She was right at the center. And not knowing what was getting ready to happen with her dad, I knew that she needed her mom. And, everything in me wanted to fight, and everything in me wanted to continue to go forward with that. But I had chosen my career for a long time. Ever since she had been born, I was in public service, in public office. And I felt that no matter what, I needed to make a tough decision to choose her. And that's ultimately what I did.
And that's where the plea deal comes in.
Yes.
Okay.
There was a second issue that arose from, what happened with with her father, and that was this issue of weapons, and I'll say weapons being found in my home. And I want to be very, very clear about something, because I don't think that things were clear before, right? In the time that we have been able to deal with this issue, there was a CPS investigation, so which my daughter was at the center of. So I'm at work and I get a call that this is all happening, and so my daughter's home and she's home alone and all of that, and I'm like, wait a minute, she just got off the bus. Like, what's going on? So I'm clueless at this point. And then I get this information that that there were these guns, and I want to say that they were legally owned guns, right? Mm-hmm. And so dealing with them, my brother-in-law, who I appreciate so much, because I have to say that when Taylor's father got locked up, he stepped in and truly was a great support to my family. When he, a few years, over the years, had several back surgeries. And because we had a bathroom on the first floor and an extra room, he came to stay with us. And he stayed with us for off and on for probably about 6 months at a time. When he came, he brought his stuff with him. And one of those things was a legally owned rifle.
Okay.
And he hid it in what he believed to be a safe place. And but it wasn't locked, right? So you can own this without. But the important part of that was it had to have in the city of Rochester, it has to have a lock on it, and it didn't have a lock on it.
So that's what made it illegal.
Correct.
Okay.
It was illegally stored.
Okay.
Right. So it wasn't an illegal weapon.
Okay.
Because it did not have a lock. It was in a secure bag. I ended up seeing the pictures and all of that because during this CPS investigation, they went through all of that, right? And family had to come and testify and talk to them, and they went through everything, and I was able to see the bag, and the issue was that it didn't have a lock on it, and we had a 11-year-old daughter in the house, right?
Okay.
And then there was the issue of a handgun that was found that was legally owned by my mother-in-law. And so what had happened with that situation was my mother-in-law in April, and this is all documented, had a severe food poisoning. Something happened where she was very sick, went to the emergency. And if you see my in-laws, they would, they're all legally and licensed gun owners. They believe in the Second Amendment. So if you see them out, they probably have their permit, and they probably have, something on them, right? And so, so she drove herself to the hospital. When going into the hospital, she realized, like, oh shoot, I have, I'm taking my purse and I have my gun in here. So she called, she called her son and said, hey, listen, I got to go to the hospital. I'm not feeling well. Please come. I can't take this gun in there. Please come and get it. And that's what he did. He came, he got it, he hid it in the home where he believed was in a secure place, so that when she got out, that she could get it. Well, she was in and out of the hospital for almost the month of April, dealing with this stomach bug, the stomach virus, wasn't really feeling well, eating and other things like that. And then, May comes and this happened, right? So, there was a lot that wasn't explained there. And I think that it's important that people know what happened there. And
so what's your rebuttal to the beauty shop's gossip to say, well, I know what's going on in my house. How did she just not know that was in her house? What's your rebuttal to that popular statement?
Well, I think that nobody goes home and looks and searching and through closets and doors and behind dressers and all that. Nobody does that. However, after, hearing and talking to my in-laws at the time, I can understand what happened here. It wasn't that, they wanted to harm me or, or they left it there for protection. It wasn't. It was a very innocent set of circumstances that turned into a very tragic situation because they were both combined, right? So when you have the first situation combined with the second situation, and then there are going to be separate, separate cases, right? I have to make a decision. Am I going to ride this out for the months or even possibly a year, take my daughter through all of that, or do I deal with it all at once? And people, and remember, I was getting ready to leave office anyway, right? So I had, lost the primary, and I was leaving the office at the end of December. And so my lawyers were very frank. They said, you're leaving anyways. What do you have to lose to give yourself and your daughter a peace of mind? And I made the best decision possible. And I have no regrets about that.
Right. So the CPS case, it dropped immediately after that, after the plea deal?
No. So, CPS is a separate entity, right? So after that case, we still had to deal with CPS, and all the charges were dropped against me because my in-laws came in and they testified in that hearing, and they told the hearing officer exactly what happened and what transpired. And those charges were dropped. And I'm thankful that, I understand, but it wasn't an intentional type of situation. It was just a unfortunate set of events that happened. And, I know my mother and my ex-mother-in-law, because I'm divorced now, but they're still my family. Right. They're still my daughter's family. Yes. They are always going to be family. And, they were definitely there for us as we all went through this challenging time. She often says, I just wish I wouldn't have made that call. I wish I wouldn't have made that call. And we can't take it back. But what I do know is that God doesn't make mistakes. And, everything happened for a reason. And, I'm thankful that I have a resilient child that, in spite of, continues to get straight A's, continues to enjoy life. And, she went through a lot. And I appreciate that I've been blessed with her.
Right. Mm-hmm. So going back to the violations of the alleged campaign violations of finances, it was said too that, is it basically that you made too much money, would you say?
So, it's complicated, and I'm going to try to simplify it because it's a complicated issue. When you're running for office, you get to have a campaign account, right? And in that account, you're supposed to pay for flyers, lawn signs, mailings, events, like you're going to a dinner, you pay for an event, things like that, right? What happened was we had gotten advice from someone that we believed to be an attorney at the time that said you can also have a political action committee. So you can raise money for both, right? Your political action committee cannot be, you can't use your money directly for your own campaign, but you can support other people with that money, right? So, and when you're in an election and you're, an elected official, you like to contribute to other people's campaigns, right? So people have used political action committees to actually pay, to help other candidates win and things like that. And so I was raising money in both places. And so that was a violation, right? You can't have two separate accounts.
And you wasn't aware of that at the time.
Correct. We were all operating under the fact that you could.
Okay.
And then when we got advice from an actual attorney, a licensed attorney, that person said, no, you're doing this all wrong, and we tried to go back and correct it. But at that time, it was too late. And we, had to deal with the consequences that came from it. I just reiterate, it really wasn't about money missing. It was more about raising too much money. Mm-hmm. And that was what ultimately the election law violation was for. You raised too much money and you should not have, and you knowingly raised that much money.
And it's funny because it's not like it said anywhere you went to Dubai or exotic trips or bought a new car.
No.
So it wasn't like it was mishandled.
No, it wasn't that at all. If I used any money, it was related to my public service and what I believe to be related to public service, right? So, rather it was an event and I'm, doing the work of the people and I have to do things, then I used it at that point in time, but it wasn't an everyday type thing. All of it lined up with, either a mayor's ball or a state of the city address or, a Democratic National Convention or something of that nature. Okay. And so understandably now looking back, maybe we should have gotten, some more advice. But, we realize now that it was wrong. Okay. And we paid the price for making, they always say ignorance of the law is not an excuse, right? But of trusting and believing in someone that ultimately did not have our best interests at heart.
It's funny you say trust, because as I'm listening to you on all the challenges that you had, it appears that you're a woman of trust. You stand on trust with others and assume that you can allow them to, instill whatever in you as far as the finances. You trusted someone to be an actual attorney. You trusted, as well as the appointed time sheriff, as far as with chief of police, with Daniel Prude. You trusted that what he told you was correct. And you also trusted your family. You just assumed that your in-laws come over and they're doing what they should do. And not saying that what they did was what they should not have done, because listen to the explanation, kind of makes sense. But I just want to gather up that trust seems to be the common denominator with you finding your way into some challenges. So what have you learned now when you think of the word trust? Because I'm just like...
So my mentor used to say, don't trust anybody, not even me, right? And he would always say that. And I never, it would go in one ear and not the other, right? It's always now trust but verify. Trust but verify.
I like that.
You know
Trust
what I mean?
but verify.
And I think that, nobody did anything intentional here, right? I don't think it was an intentional harm, an intentional hurt. I'm going to do this to intentionally make this happen. I don't think that anybody had any intent, but you can't dictate what consequences happen when that intent or when a situation happens. And, you can't, and there were severe consequences. There are things that happen that no one will ever know, right? Things that, I had to endure, had to really build from the ground up, rebuild from the ground up. And there was a lot in that, but I don't believe anybody intentionally did anything wrong here.
So when you say that, just if I can interrupt, would that be including your ex-husband, Mr. Granderson? Would you say he didn't intend to hurt you, if will, or put you in those positions that unfortunately the public saw?
Correct.
Okay.
I don't think anybody will willingly do something like that to their wife or their daughter, for that much, right? It wasn't, he woke up one day and said, "Oh yeah, I'm just going to do this to hurt." It was a terrible decision, some terrible choices that he ultimately paid the price for, and paid his debt to society and continues to. But I can't sit here and say that I believe that he intentionally did those things. For me, if I'm asking for my community and for other folks to forgive me for my shortcomings, I'm going to forgive him. Okay. But I believe that relationships and marriages are built on trust. And when you don't have that trust anymore, then there's no going back, and that's the reason why I proceeded and moved forward with getting the official divorce as it pertains to my daughter. And she's always going to be a daddy's girl, but there were also some things where her and I had to rebuild, had to build a relationship, right? She was very upset with me, very angry, because she felt that I wasn't there. If you were around, and I thought I was around, I thought that I was there, but I wasn't present, right? I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I was the perfect right wife, that I said the right things all the time, that I did everything correctly, because I didn't. I've learned and looked back at that time in my life and recognized some things that I could have done differently. I could have been present more. I could have paid attention a little bit more. I did not have to necessarily put other things first. And now I recognize that. And her and I have been able to rebuild and build a stronger relationship because of it.
So I see happiness in you.
Yeah.
There's a glow there, which I'm proud of.
Thank you.
This Women's History Month is great to see a Black woman smiling and being able to glow. But sometimes, often, there's someone near that's causing and igniting such a smile and such a glow. So I have been doing my little research and snooping around on the internet, and I've seen you seemingly with someone now. So how is that? Is that true? Are you with someone?
Yes, I definitely have moved on. I've been divorced for over 2 years now. And, I've found happiness again, and I'm thankful. I'm thankful that I've been given the opportunity to love again, and it's a very different type of love. And I'm a very different type of person, right? Who I was when I was 25 and starting out and all that is different than who I am today at 45. I'm more focused on, relationships and family and, being present in a moment. And I'm grateful that I'm getting an opportunity to do it better the second time around. And, we're just moving forward in everything. I am looking forward in career. I am looking at running for Rochester City Court Judge.
Okay.
And,
Congratulations.
Thank you. So, starting that process soon. And after that, we'll see what happens. There's no guarantees at anything, but I think that it's important to show that you can, there's two things that I want my daughter to learn from this experience and from what we've been through as a family. Number one, if you're not happy somewhere, when I was growing up, my mom and, I believed and I truly believed that you always had to stay. No matter what, you had to stay. No matter what you're going through, you have to stay. But you don't have to stay at the expense of your own happiness, of your own sanity. And I want her to know that it's okay to start over. It's okay to rebuild. The second thing I want her to know is that you don't ever have to give up on your dreams. Sometimes you fall short, sometimes you fall down, but it's okay to get back up and to try again. And so I've decided to try again, and we'll see what happens. And I'm hopeful that I'll be successful, but I'm okay with whatever decision the community makes.
Speaking of the community, lastly, when you're out and about now, do you feel, most of the time you can feel the spirit of forgiveness, or people are over it. When you're out and about, how are the approaches? Do you feel that way? Because I'm glad to hear that you're running again for a public servant, but you're going to need the public.
Yes.
So how do you feel when you encounter people these days when you're out?
I still have challenges, right?
Okay.
A lot happened.
Yes.
So rebuilding that trust over again, it takes time. And so when I'm out, most people are happy to see me. And mostly I think that is because, everybody's been through struggles. Everybody has challenges every day. Unfortunately, mine was just very, very public. Yes. And they see me and they're like, wow, oh, you look good. Oh, I'm so happy. I've been praying for you. And that goes a long way. And then you have some people that, no matter what you say, no matter what you do, you'll never be able to overcome the challenges or the way that they feel about you. And I understand that as well. My hope is that as I proceed, that people will see the new and improved Lovely, a new person that has really been through the ringer and have rebuilt herself and her family.
Well, I'm rooting for you.
Thank
I'm
you.
rooting for you. I believe in you, and may God's favor be upon you, upon this new endeavor.
I appreciate that.
Thank you. Well, there you have it. This is our edition of Mark My Words. I just want to let you know that I had a pleasure to sit here with the lovely Ann Warren, and I just want you all to know that broken crayons still can color. Our past issues are not our current identity. It was a pleasure to sit with you today. Thank you. And our second brand today, for a moment to mention, is Dip It. Dip It is the ultimate finger food and condiment caddy. More than just a food container, Dip It is a walking billboard with the unlimited graphic design and advertising possibilities. To learn more about Dip It, visit www.dipitbrand.com. To discuss purchasing Dip It, email Toby Butler at t.butler@dipitbrand.com. For every finger food, at every event, at home, or on the go, Dip It.
When I talk, they listen. This is what they've been missing. This podcast is what they've been missing. When I talk, they listen. This is what they've been missing. This podcast is what they've been missing. When I talk, they listen. This is what they've been missing. This podcast, this is what they've been missing. When I talk, they listen. This is what they've been missing. This podcast is what they've been missing. Word.